Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is June 7, 2022, and this is S4A Livestream number 21. We do these live streams now about once a week. Sometimes we skip a week, sometimes we do two in a week, but on average, they're about once a week. And I have been using these live streams both to interact with some of the audience in real time, or close to it anyway, and also to cover some more current event stuff. Sometimes making a whole video on current events topics just isn't worth it. If I'm going to do a whole video, usually I like to put a whole bunch of articles together and do not quite a full video essay, but more than just, oh, here's an interesting article. But the live streams are a good place to do that. We can also do, kind of like a weekly channel recap and just check in on what's going on in the world and what's going on in the channel and what's going on with you, the audience. So we have currently some people, about 17 people in the chat room, and we're recording now. So we will go ahead and just get started. So I'm going to start, contrary to what we do in the videos, I'm going to start with thanking the patrons, because these streams are pretty long. I'll just put that up at the front there. And names that you see in yellow are people who have been supporting for a year or more. So nobody's quite at the 2-year mark, but we're getting close on a few people. I'll have to pick another color for them. But thanks to all the patrons. If you want to support the show, we don't run ads, super chat, stuff like that. Right now, at least, I don't ever plan on running ads. That I think helps YouTube and corporations, the ones doing the advertising, more than it helps me. And sorry, I'm getting distracted by the siren. Hang on. All right, poorly timed siren. Um, Nobody needs to be subjected to ads either, so that's just better. But if you do want to support, patreon.com/socialism for all, $2 or more, whatever you see fit. And it can be recurring, or you can just do a one-time. Either way, that works. So thank you very much again to the patrons. So as far as checking in with what's been going on at the channel, this past week, since the last live stream, I uploaded 7 short audiobooks, mostly Mao, one Ho Chi Minh, and one Lenin. And basically this month I have a lot more short and medium length audiobooks in the pipeline. I got kind of a nasty stomach illness this weekend, so I was not doing much recording since I uploaded those things. I am more or less back up to speed now, but that's there would have been more up on the channel otherwise. That said, I got a lot of rest, so probably worthwhile on the whole. And like I said, more short to medium length audiobooks coming, so you can expect a lot of content coming out in the audiobook domain, that part of the channel. That's one of the things that I really like doing on the channel, because we go back to the source, people who really knew what they were talking about and accomplished something in the world, and then use that as kind of a jumping off point for having a discussion about whatever it is that they're talking about in that particular audiobook. So before we get into the chat or anything else, some loose ends as we start our current events. We sort of alternate between some current event stuff and catching up with the chat stuff. Let's have a quick COVID check-in. So this is COVID-19 wastewater monitoring from biobot.io/data. This is a site that aggregates different wastewater monitoring systems around the United States and puts them into a really handy chart. You're looking at total results for the entire span of the pandemic from early 2020 up to the present. And as you can see, we have, ever since Omicron came down, that's the huge spike near the right side of the chart. There was a month and a half lull, and then since March, the curve has just been climbing and climbing. It has now surpassed the Delta curve, and it is on par with the winter 2020-2021 curve. And it's about to be as high as, if it keeps climbing at the current rate, as high as the initial spring 2020 curve as far as the actual COVID that is in people's bodies replicating and being shed into the wastewater. So, if it surpasses the April 2020, May 2020 curve before the big shutdown and, all that stuff went into effect, then it will be second only to the actual Omicron spike. So all this talk of, oh, the pandemic's over. No. They were saying that in December and January, like, oh, this is it. This is the end of the pandemic. We're having a spike. We were having a spike at that time that was 3.5 times bigger than any previous spike, or 4 times, like depending on how you're counting it. That's not over. That's literally the opposite of it being over. That is actually not over. That is worse than ever. So, where it's going this year, we're already having, one of these major lumps of COVID. They're not really counting the cases anymore. And, you can see that in the light blue line. But yeah, if you break it down by county, which you can do, actually, let's look at region first. So this was climbing a bit more steeply. The Northeast, which is that orange-yellow color, that has dropped off a bit, although it's leveled out and it's probably going to go back up again. You can see, for example, the West, that's that teal color. That, if you go back to like April, May, it did drop for a while, and then, of course, it picked right back up. That's one thing about these COVID wastewater curves. They wiggle. But don't take a momentary downturn as like the end, because really all of them do that. Look at the purple one, which is like the Midwest, sort of northern Midwest. That does the same thing right in the middle of the graph. It sort of peaks for a while, slumps, slacks a little bit, and now it's trending upwards again. So overall, when you add all 4 of the regions together, it does add up to an overall increase. So that's where we're at. And then I just grabbed one county screen. I've done this in some of the other COVID update videos in the past. I mean, some of the counties just on this screen, this is just the first set of, you can see it's all A and B. Look at the curves. This is the last 6 months, this chart. You can see it's December 2021 to June 2022. So basically the first third, or first meaning the left side, because it goes, time-wise left to right. The first third of it is December, January, February. So that's the time of Omicron. And some of these counties are having spikes roughly on par with that, or in some cases even bigger. If you look at the center column bottom, there is, it may have been that there was less wastewater monitoring during Omicron in that county. I don't know. But the current curve is much higher, indicating more COVID in the area. So why aren't the cases being counted? Complicated. There's a lot more rapid tests now. But anyway, COVID's not going away, and long COVID, even if you stop the hospitalizations and the deaths, which is great, you don't want those. Long COVID is nothing to sneeze at. Our last COVID update, if you look at the part 3 video from a few weeks ago, that's all about long COVID and the biological damage that it does. And it's a pretty substantial portion of people who get COVID. So it's something you want to keep out of your body, yet we're currently in a pretty major spike, and it's just not really being talked about. Anecdotally, I know a lot of people, just mentioning that they have COVID, or their family has COVID, or a friend has COVID, or their coworkers do. But it's just like, people have just accepted this line that it's over, and it's not. The data are there. It's not over. So anyway, we ended the last live stream with a video, with a current events article from Business Insider about the biblical economic reckoning that was being forecast for this summer. Basically, we're looking at probable stagflation, possible recession, like something big on the horizon. We're having lots of inflation, just meaning high prices. And the stagflation part is it's economic stagnation, as the name suggests. Low economic activity combined with high prices. This is a bad situation to be in. Saw this article today. Target expects squeezed profits from aggressive plan to get rid of unwanted inventory. So basically, very large retailer Target is trying to, drastically do what they can to make changes to avert sort of like a worst case scenario because things are changing and it's not looking good. They're trying to spin it as that people are looking for different items now that quote COVID is over. Like people aren't looking for, snuggies and like around the house type of stuff. They're looking for party dresses and stuff like that. That's their PR. But just to go into a couple of the bullet points, Target said it will take a short-term hit to profits as it cancels orders and marks down unwanted merchandise. CEO Brian Cornell said the big box retailer wants to clear room for the merchandise, including groceries, for the merchandise. Yeah, it's amazing, by the way. I don't know who proofreads these articles, but riddled with typos most of the time. Anyway, for merchandise, including groceries and back to school supplies, Target anticipates its operating margin rate for the second quarter will be around 2%. That's lower than the outlook it gave less than 3 weeks ago. Speaking of, by the way, updated, less rosy economic outlooks, I believe the World Bank just today was like significantly downgrading its growth, revising downward its like growth forecast from, I want to say like 4% to 2% or 1.5%, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, the company also reiterated its forecast for sales growth and said that margins will look healthier in the back half of the year. So if you go through this article, and I'm not going to right now, they are basically dumping anything that they think will not sell. They are trying to stock the shelves just with like, excuse me, the highest demand items. So it's pretty drastic. And, I don't know how often they do this, but it seems fairly unusual. Now, following up on that, here's another sort of, within the financial and big economy genre of stories here. Jamie Dimon says that JP Morgan is bracing itself for an economic, quote, hurricane. This is dated June 1st. Says that Fed actions and war in Europe create unprecedented challenge. Still too soon to say how intense the storm will be. And then to get into the article, Jamie Dimon warned investors to prepare for an economic hurricane as the economy struggles against an unprecedented combination of challenges, including tightening monetary policy and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Jamie Dimon warned investors to prepare for an economic That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way, the JP Morgan Chase & Company chief executive officer said at a conference sponsored by Alliance Bernstein Holdings Wednesday. We don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy. You better brace yourself. Okay. And might I just add, if they really thought that, a major storm was out of the question, they would not be adding that in. Dimon said at JP Morgan's Investor Day in May that there were storm clouds looming over the U.S. economy. But he said he's since updated that forecast given the challenges faced by the Federal Reserve as it attempts to rein in inflation. Right now, it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. Everyone thinks that the Fed can handle it. Shares of the company dropped 1.8% to $129.81 at 11:21 a.m. in New York after Dimon's remarks on the economy, extending this year's decline to 18%. JP Morgan economists last month lowered their growth outlook for the second half of 2022 to a 2.4% rate from 3% for the first half of 2023 to 1.5% from 2.1% for the second half of 2023. Sorry, I completely botched that line, but continuing. And for the second half of 2023 to 1% from 1.4%. And I don't know if that was me or if that was the line, but I'm going to keep going. They cited falling stock prices, higher mortgage rates, and a stronger dollar relative to trading partners. Dimon said Wednesday that JP Morgan is preparing for that turbulence by being conservative with its balance sheet. I want to kind of shed non-operating deposits again, which we can do in size to protect ourselves so we can serve clients in bad times. That's the environment we're dealing with. Still, he cited the strength of the consumer. Really, really. So the strength of the consumer in like record inflation. Okay. Rising wages and plentiful jobs as the quote bright clouds in the economy. So by the way, on the subject of rising wages, the Fed's policy is basically they're trying to get wages down. They're like wages are too high right now. People can't survive on the wages they're getting, but according to the Fed, they're too high. And so, you know, this seems like kind of chaos to me, but anyway, earlier Wednesday, Wells Fargo and Co. Chief Executive Officer Charlie Scharf said he expects the pace of loan growth at the company to moderate after rising in the first quarter. End of article. Possibly due to rising interest rates, people will not be as inclined to be borrowing money. So there's just a little bit of follow-up from last week's article. This hasn't been the storm clouds haven't been unloading quite yet, but things are not looking great, obviously. I mean, this is the aftermath of 2008, the fake recovery that was mostly a partial recovery for the capitalist class, the 1%. For everybody else, it hasn't been so great. I mean, sometimes since 2008, between 2008 and now, have been better than others. But overall, it's not like exactly been a booming era of prosperity for the common working person. Not by far. It's been a time of instability and, just challenge, struggle, hardship. So anyway, that's to start us off. We have a lot more current events things that I want to dip into on many other subjects, but let's hop over to the chat and see what's going on there. So, what do we have? Okay, monkeypox comment. Everyone seems confused about monkeypox, but supposedly it is spreading via, quote, respiratory droplets. So I've seen different things on this. Officially, it doesn't. There are studies, though, that suggest it can spread via aerosol droplets, just like COVID. It's unclear how long the aerosolized monkeypox particles remain infectious, like how long they can actually hurt you for. But they can remain for, I think it was like 8 days was what I was reading. So that the cases have continued to go up of monkeypox. The current cumulative total is about 1050, so a little over 1,000 at this point. That's a lot more than we had a month ago. And I did see an article, which not really worth covering, but anybody handling pets, many animals can catch monkeypox, rodents, like if you have mice, whatever. So it can definitely, there's a danger there of monkeypox. Like with COVID, certain animals can get COVID and others can't, like cats, more susceptible. I think dogs less so, or possibly not at all. But yeah, monkeypox, same deal. It can jump from humans to animals and then possibly back to humans again. Of course, after mutating, because that's what things do when they replicate their genetic material. You get various mutations. Some of them will confer advantage. Many will not, but some will. And yeah, you just don't want it replicating. So now we're now up to about 1,000 cases, which is about 1,000 more than is normal. So, the curve keeps going up with that. That's, cumulative. But even the 7-day average, it's increasing. So not real good. It's not at a point yet where, we've got 100,000 cases or something like that. Even 10,000, I think it would be really time to start sounding the alarm much more dramatically. I mean, they're already they're already not doing things that they should be doing. Like, I believe we covered last time the Quebec school where there was a student that tested positive for monkeypox and they isolated the student, but not the class. There's a good example of not doing what you should do to control diseases. Baffling, but yeah, I guess, the powers that be feel that there is a margin for, hey, little monkeypox never hurt anybody, about what you're saying. Anyway, going back to the chat. So, comment, here's a potentially interesting topic. Well, let's see. As Marxists, we know that class society taints virtually every aspect of the world, and since we don't believe in an, quote, objective authority on truth that exists outside of class society, I've come to the conclusion that bourgeois academia shouldn't be blindly trusted. Nothing should be blindly trusted, okay? Nothing should be blindly trusted. Sometimes the scientific community is to capitalism what the church was to feudalism. Yeah, I don't think we really need to be questioning the Big Bang Theory right now, as the comment goes on to say. I don't really know what the point of that is right now. I think it's more appropriate to, critical thinking. That's the key here. Part of critical thinking, it can be considering the source, but also, knowing how to actually analyze, like how to read a scientific study, for example. That's important. Knowing how to evaluate evidence. Is it quality evidence? Is it low quality evidence? That's key. I do plan to actually do more about that on the channel at some point. You can't just say, oh, this authority said this, and I like what they say, therefore it is true. That doesn't actually make it true. Maybe they have a good track record, but that doesn't in and of itself make it true. You need to be able to think critically. You need to be able to evaluate evidence. And there are limits, obviously, fields that are not within your particular domain of expertise. You're going to have some limits as to how much you're going to be able to fact check them, but then you can turn to, others who can, and then try to follow their explanation of their evaluation of the evidence and so forth. But yeah, I do want to do more about that because it seems like there are a lot of people who do get into, Marxist social science, like analysis of society and class conflict and class struggle, who don't really seem to be able to evaluate evidence very well. And that's not a good thing to have going around. So I do plan to set, I don't know if it's just going to be a video, a segment, like a whole section, a playlist of 10 videos. I don't know what it's going to be, but I do want to do more on that. Yeah, so don't trust bourgeois academia blindly. Don't trust any academia blindly. Like anybody can make mistakes, and there are many examples even within socialism of socialist societies being under pressure and using not the best stuff that could have been used. So yeah, science is science overall. The profit motive / profit mandate within capitalism really limits the scope and scale of how scientific knowledge can be used. It really is constrained by the need for profit. Ultimately, it is under socialism that we gain liberation of many things, including science. But yeah, you've always got to be able to analyze things critically. So, but yeah, as far as like cosmology and things like that, I don't know that that's really like a pressing concern right now. It's not super politicized, and I don't think that it has like that much bearing on immediate political concerns at this point. So in fact, rather than questioning stuff like that, you want to question something. What can practically be done to take struggle further and to bring people out of darkness? Question some religious fundamentalism. Before you start getting into questioning the Big Bang Theory, how about we question creationism? You know that there's a creationist museum in the United States? How about we can have other conversations after there are no more creationist museums in the United States? That would be my preference. So, not to be overly dismissive, but that couldn't concern me less, to be honest. So, all right, another comment. The strength of consumers. I barely have enough strength as a consumer to eat right now. Yeah. What can you say? What can you really say? Jamie Dimon, not exactly man of the people, not exactly in touch with what is going on. So let's get back to some current events. We really do have a lot to get through that I would at least like to try to get through. So, where are we starting here? A couple of stories about housing and the housing crisis. Let's start with this one. So this is from the AP, May 21st by Travis Lawler. I guess he lolls quite a bit. Sorry, that was lame. But with public camping a felony, Tennessee homeless seek refuge. Yeah, you read that right. Public camping is now a felony, I guess. And so let's check it out. Cookeville, Tennessee. Miranda Atnip lost her home during the coronavirus pandemic after her boyfriend moved out and she fell behind on bills. Living in a car, the 34-year-old worries every day. Being 34 and living in a car, your adult life is just beginning, really. I mean, you're out there, and also, you're not in your 20s anymore. You're slowing down. Life gets a little harder in your 30s, honestly. This is not, living in a car at 34. This is the United States today. Worries every day about getting money for food, finding somewhere to shower, and saving up. Oh, you don't have a shower in your car? Amazing. And saving up enough money for an apartment where her 3 children can live with her again. So her family is also torn apart. Now she has a new worry. So just in case, you were concerned that being homeless in and of itself doesn't destroy your life enough. Well, the Tennessee government is here to, coming to the rescue. Tennessee is about to become the first U.S. state to make it a felony to camp on local public property such as parks. Honestly, it's going to be hard, Atnip said of the law, which takes effect July 1st. I don't know where else to go. Tennessee already made it a felony in 2020 to camp on most state-owned property. In pushing the expansion, Senator Paul Bailey, who, anyway, noted that no one has been convicted under that law, then why do you have it, and said he doesn't expect this one to be enforced much either. Okay, why are you pushing an expansion then? What's the point of having it if you're like, oh, we're not going to use it? They don't pass laws they don't want to use. Neither does Luke Eldridge, a man who has worked with homeless people in the city of Cookeville and supports Bailey's plan, in part because he hopes it will spur people who care about the homeless to work with him on long-term solutions. And in the meantime, and if they don't, stunning. The law requires that violators receive at least 24 hours notice before an arrest. The felony charge is punishable by up to 6 years in prison and the loss of voting rights. It's going to be up to prosecutors if they want to issue a felony, Bailey said, but it's only going to come to that if people really don't want to move. Yeah, well, is that a likely scenario in any cases? Yes. Sometimes people have just been through so much that they just can't pick themselves up. And maybe it's just for 24 hours. And maybe after just pulling themselves together, they would be able to. And now you're not giving them that chance anymore. The system is just looking for new ways to become brutal and to treat people horribly. After several years of steady decline, homelessness in the U.S. began increasing in 2017. So, interesting factoid about that. Go right now, look up housing prices. What you will see in the U.S. is that housing prices bottomed in 2015, 2016. They started climbing in 2017. I'll bet there is a relationship. And they're astronomical. They're through the roof today. Like, things are 3 times what they should be price-wise. A survey in January 2020 found for the first time that the number of unsheltered homeless people exceeded those in shelters. So as we covered in another video on homelessness that we did, I'll try to remember to link it in the video description. Being homeless is not like a one-size-fits-all situation. There are many different types of being homeless. Sometimes it's couch surfing. Sometimes it is sleeping in a park, sometimes it is camping in the woods, sometimes it's living in your car, etc., etc. The problem was exacerbated by COVID-19, with shelters limiting capacity. Public pressure to do something about the increasing number of highly visible homeless encampments has pushed even many traditional liberal cities to clear them. Not to fix the problem, but to, get these people out of my sight. That is exactly the impetus for the video that we did on homelessness. That's what it was all about. Was about upper middle class people being like, get these people out of my sight. Although camping has generally been regulated by local vagrancy laws, Texas passed a statewide ban last year. Municipalities that fail to enforce the ban risk losing state funding. That's how they get you to fuck over homeless people, is, hey, we'll cut your funding for everything else if you don't fuck over the homeless. Several other states have introduced similar bills, but Tennessee is the only one to make camping a felony. Another little side note, what is driving this? Hang on. A lot of road noise today. We got corporations using algorithms to buy up housing that is meant for personal use, and corporations are buying it up either to turn it into rental property or to resell it, like scalping housing practically. Many people are turning things into Airbnb, which prior to 10 years ago or whenever Airbnb came in was not a possibility. But that's where, all of the housing has become that much more precarious because of all of this. Again, I did 2 videos right in a row. It was the beginning of April. It was the first videos I put up in April on the subject. And it's intensely horrifying, the amount of change that has happened in the U.S. housing market in the last 5 years. It was already not great before that. It's awful now. Continuing. Bailey's district includes Cookeville, a city of about 35,000 people between Nashville and Knoxville, where the local newspaper has chronicled growing concern with the increasing number of homeless people. And again, not about, hey, these people need housing. Just like, hey, get them out of here. The Herald-Citizen reported last year that complaints about panhandlers, i.e. homeless people trying to survive, nearly doubled between 2019 and 2020, from 157 to 300. In 2021, the city installed signs encouraging residents to give to charities instead of panhandlers. And to the city, I would just say, fuck you, people need that money. And, giving it to the charity, you're paying for the charity's salary. And a lot of those, there are different, I can't remember the name of the one I usually look at, but there are agencies that have websites that basically rank the efficiency of different nonprofits. You have nonprofits out there that, 60, 70% of the money that they take just goes to pay salaries. And then they use the other 30, 40% to actually do whatever it is they're supposed to be doing. A lot of them are just kind of cons. So no, give money to people. Give money directly to people. They need it. And the city council twice considered panhandling bans. It's just, this is a system not wanting to deal with the consequences of itself, basically. The Republican lawmaker acknowledges that the complaints from Cookeville got his attention. City council members have told him that Nashville ships its homeless here, Bailey said. The way that people put this shit, I swear, it's a rumor many in Cookeville have heard and Bailey seems to believe. When Nashville fenced off a downtown park for renovation recently, the homeless people who frequent it disappeared. Where did they go? Bailey asked. Atnip laughed at the idea of people being shipped in from Nashville. She was living in nearby Monterey when she lost her home and had to send her children to live with her parents. She has received some government help, but not enough to get her back on her feet, she said. At one point, she got a housing voucher, but couldn't find a landlord who would accept it. She and her new husband saved enough to finance a used car and were working as delivery drivers until it broke down. Now she's afraid they will lose the car and have to move to a tent, though she isn't sure where they will pitch it. Another side note there, many homeless people work. People have a lot of incorrect ideas about what being homeless means. But there's a very good YouTube channel, Invisible People. They have a lot of subscribers. They're getting eyeballs. Go check them out. They do really good work just interviewing people on the street, just asking them a few questions and painting a more accurate picture of why people are on the street, what it's like there, and what their hopes are for the future. It's crushing. This is a terrible, terrible situation. Just what this country is doing is unconscionable. Unconscionable. It seems like once one thing goes wrong, it kind of snowballs, Atnip said. We were making money with DoorDash. Our bills were paid. We were saving. Then the car goes kaput and everything goes bad. Eldridge, who has worked with Cookville's homeless for a decade, is an unexpected advocate of the camping ban. He said he wants to continue helping the homeless, but some people aren't motivated to improve. Fuck you. But some are addicted to drugs, he said. Some are hiding from law enforcement. Fuck you. People like that should not be working with the homeless, honestly. There should be a culture within. I don't know who's funding that guy. Maybe somebody is keeping him with those views in that position for a particular reason. People like that should not be allowed to work with the homeless. I don't mean allowed by funders, because obviously they don't have an interest in ending homelessness, but not allowed by the community to, they should be driven out. Anyway, Eldridge estimates there are about 60 people living outside, more or less permanently in Cookville, and he knows them all. Most of them have been here a few years, and not once have they asked for housing help, he said. Possibly they are at a point where they feel like nobody cares and they're afraid to ask, because sometimes just people can't take any more rejection. Sometimes people just can't hear no one more time. And again, this guy is a callous moron who shouldn't be working in this field. Eldridge knows his position is unpopular with other advocates. Yeah, definitely. The big problem with this law is that it does nothing to solve homelessness. In fact, it will make the problem worse, said Bobby Watts, CEO of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. Having a felony on your record makes it hard to qualify for some types of housing, harder to get a job, harder to qualify for benefits. Not everyone wants to be in a crowded shelter with a curfew, but people will move off the streets given the right opportunities, Watts said. Homelessness among U.S. military veterans, for example, has been cut nearly in half over the past decade through a combination of housing subsidies and social services. It's not magic, he said. What works for that population works for every population. Yeah, the solution to homelessness is housing. Tina Lomax, who runs Seeds of Hope of Tennessee in nearby Sparta, was once homeless with her children. Many people are just one paycheck, or one tragedy, or again, one failed car, something like that, away from being on the streets, she said. Even in her community of 5,000, affordable housing is very hard to come by. If you have a felony on your record, holy smokes, she said. Eldridge, like Senator Bailey, said he doesn't expect many people to be prosecuted for sleeping on public property. I can promise they're not going to be out there rounding up homeless people, he said of Cookville law enforcement. Then why are they making the law, you utter fucking tool? Think about it. I'm sure he knows. But he doesn't know what might happen in other parts of the state, and clearly doesn't give a shit. He hopes the new law will spur some of its opponents to work with him on long-term solutions for Cookville's homelessness. Like what? With attitudes like this guy has, what does he consider solutions? If they all work together, it would mean, quote, a lot of resources and possible funding sources to assist those in need. But other advocates don't think threatening people with a felony is a good way to help them. Criminalizing homelessness just makes people criminals, Watts said. Yeah. So he thinks it's going to spur opponents of the law to work with him. Like what? People opposed to this law aren't already trying to work on getting housing for people? That's fucking insane. Also, if you ruin one person's life further by giving them, if even one person gets arrested for this, that's on people like this guy, who's supposedly a homeless advocate, and is like, oh, I think it'll be leverage for me against other homeless activists. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, that is the end of that article. Not a lot of happy news coming out of the world of U.S. homelessness. And it's a much bigger world than one might be inclined to assume. Let's check in with the chat. Public camping makes it sound like something a crazy dad forced their family to do on Memorial Day weekend. If they called it what it was, it would be too vile. Yeah. Just house people for fuck's sake. Yeah. Doesn't expect it to be enforced much is quite the euphemism for selectively enforced. Can't imagine against thinking emoji. Some people don't know or don't even care about people living in their cars in the US, but still criticize Cuban homes, good point, for being not the most stellar for first world standards. 1.9 million lowest price. I'm not sure what you're looking at. I mean, lowest price in the US is definitely not one. Oh, do you mean in this town? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're talking about. High density housing is what the US needs. Social housing. So this is another thing. In the late 90s, there was a law passed banning the US, I believe, from doing any federal public housing construction. So that's definitely been a contributor. Also, if you remember in the 2000s, prior to the 2008 global financial meltdown, capitalism showing that can't reform capitalism, one of the things driving that in like 2004, 5, 6 was the housing bubble. What was it? Building overly expensive housing, like, developers trying to get rich, building expensive housing, and then banks giving mortgages to people to buy that housing. And the people clearly, couldn't, by any like reasonable assessment, actually like pay the mortgage. But the banks were okay with that, and other lenders were okay with that because if the people defaulted, then they get to keep the money that they got, paid on the mortgage so far, and they get the house, and then they get to resell it, and like lather, rinse, repeat, basically. So it crashed. That's why one of the reforms that came out of the 2008, autopsy or semi-autopsy, was making it harder, like more stringent requirements for people to get a mortgage. They didn't fix the housing prices. They just made it harder to get a loan. So you have empty housing sitting around, or it's getting bought up by corporations and turned into Airbnbs and whatever the fuck else. But people still can't afford it. Like individuals, the type of person for whom it was designed still can't afford it. Anyway, that was, in the 2000s. And then less than a decade prior, you had a situation where, hey, no more new public housing being built. So that doesn't compete then with the, private housing. And so prices go up because, you don't have to compete against government housing. So there's a lot of things. I will say one of the few useful things that AOC and the squad have done was they started, and somebody can correct me if I have this wrong, but they started by repealing the law that bans public housing. Like that is literally, step zero just to get off the ground. So credit for that. Obviously, we need to do much, much, much more than that. So, I was just about to mention that all these quote starter homes being bought up by moguls setting up bread and B&Bs, we'll just go with that, in areas folks might otherwise be able to actually afford housing. Yeah, it's housing intended for personal use getting turned into commercial use. Then there's just a shortage of, individual housing left over in many areas, and the prices just go up because it just becomes this object of speculation then. And, this is one of the things that a lot of more like petty bourgeois people were saying in the 2010s was like, oh, the stock market's too unstable, real estate's where it's at, become a landlord, this and that. And so a lot of people with, a few $100,000 in their bank account started dabbling in real estate. And so we have a situation now where a basic human essential is being treated like basically just a luxury, speculated on. And there's almost nothing like tying it down. Like there's, some restrictions on who can get a mortgage, but Nothing about like, oh, hey, are you a corporation buying up 5,000 houses, 50,000 houses? Fair game, you know? Let's see. Sounds like that anti-camping law was written by the private prison lobby 6 years. Holy mo. Yeah, I mean that's talk about, overlapping or piggybacking interests. You now have this sick predatory establishment. I don't really like using that word, but in this sense, it is this sort of conglomeration of, shared interests that are particular to criminalizing and imprisoning people. And yeah, I mean, we've seen cases, for example, in Pennsylvania. I remember years ago, Democracy Now! Covering a story about a Pennsylvania judge who was convicted for fraud. He was directly getting kickbacks from the local private prison to convict juvenile offenders or accused offenders. He was being paid money directly and bribed by the private prison company because the private prison company, they get paid per head. So the more people they lock up, literally the more they get paid. That is their like profit model. And of course, again, speaking of the 2000s, Corrections Corporation, that was the growth industry, private prisons in the 2000s in the US. You want an idea of what this country is about. It's a sick, festering, fascist nightmare is what it is. And it needs to be dismantled. Anyway, so yeah, I'll bet, honestly, if you want to dig into who wrote that anti-camping law, you also have things like ALEC, the conservative boilerplate legislation writers. Like you get these think tanks that just write up legislation and then they just give it to their people and they're like, here, do this. And again, overlapping interests, private prison interests, definitely. That's a good point, pointing out the shared interest there. So yeah, 6 years for being homeless, for literally existing in a park. So, big money in locking innocents up behind bars and in keeping people out of already built and perfectly good homes. Remember, siblings, the working class includes the unemployed, homeless, incarcerated, and immigrants. Anyone pushing anything else is anti-revolutionary and wrong. Yeah, absolutely. So this is the thing. Actually, I was talking to somebody in the YouTube comments. We did a lot of those union, organizing manuals couple of weeks ago, and somebody was talking about organizing the unemployed and what can you do. And some unions, I was using IWW materials because they're very accessible, and there's like a real emphasis on direct action, things anybody can do rather than sort of waiting around for big union full of lawyers to like swoop in and help you from, from on high. More of a guerrilla type, union organizing approach. I know that the IWW, so their thing is organizing the worker, not the workplace. And I think we could recast that slightly as organizing the working class, not just a workplace. In other words, a lot of unions are not mass membership organizations. They will organize a workplace, but once you leave that workplace, you're not in the union anymore. But other unions, again, such as the IWW, that are more intended to be revolutionary mass movements of a type, they are just, you join, you get a membership card, you get your training, and you network with other unionists, and you try to organize your workplace if you can, and that's how it goes. But whether you move around between workplaces, you're still in the union. So the idea is to organize students and the unemployed, etc. And this isn't just, altruism or idealism. It's also practical. Because why? Because what did we see during COVID and a lot of the people refusing to work during COVID, even after, everything was declared green, go back to work, etc. So a lot of people still felt it wasn't safe. And so we were seeing people turning down many jobs. And I think you had a sort of rolling general strike. It was not well coordinated, but there was a general sense, I think, among US workers in general, there was a lot of talk about like, hey, we should say no. Conditions aren't good, pay isn't good. We need to organize that into something much more, compressed, militant, just well organized. But what we saw during that was people like senior citizens, like retirees coming out of retirement to scab against people not working and, filling in the labor shortage, as they put it. No, they're scabbing against people who are refusing bad conditions. You don't want that. And who is a likely pool of people that can serve as scabs? Well, the reserve army of the unemployed. So you want to organize the unemployed. Some unions would pay unemployed workers to be on the picket line. Be like, look, we'll pay you not to work because we're trying to win this strike. And we'd rather have you out here carrying this picket sign than in there scabbing against our people. And so, yeah, you got to organize unemployed and everything else. You got to organize the working class, not just workplaces. So, key concept there. Another comment. They need motivation. You need empathy. Fuck you. Yes. We have legit masses of homeless because they're low on motivation. A likely story. Comment. I've been homeless 3 times and I can critique the system. Yes. By all means. By all means. I mean, honestly, like, this is the kind of stuff that, like, you want to be a socialist in the United States. This isn't about organizing the, like, petty bourgeois, like, comfortable people calling for homeless people to be, quote, dealt with. It's about workers who are, a paycheck away from being homeless or are homeless or, this is the kind of organizing that needs to be done. Continuing. Were there homeless masses under feudalism? No, honestly, there weren't even homeless masses under earlier capitalism. I covered this in that video. Let me get the title of it for people. I'm hoping that the browser isn't going to crash. The 2 videos that I did on this recently, okay. So from 2 months ago, the first video is #housing crisis. Joe Rogan guest Michael Schellenberger's San Francisco book is one big right-wing lie. That's the first title. The second one is, it's on the other side of live stream number 12, USA #housing crisis. Amid out-of-control rent and house prices, corporations buy up one-family residences. Those 2 videos, they're each about an hour and 20 minutes, and they're kind of a part 1 and part 2. The earlier one about Michael Schellenberger is more specifically about homelessness. It's a decent homelessness 101 if you're not as personally familiar with it and want to know more about what does being homeless in the U.S. mean, where does it come from, etc. The other one is more about where are the houses going. Why isn't there housing? Because, again, homelessness is a housing problem. In the Schellenberger video, I got into how homelessness as we know it today is basically a phenomenon of neoliberalism, even in earlier capitalism. There were workhouses, there were poorhouses, there were skid rows, there were flop houses, aka single room occupancies. Have you ever seen the movie Big? That like super shitty 1-room place with the shared bathroom out in the hallway that he rents for his $187 a week that he's getting. That's a flop house. They tore them down during, in the 70s into the 80s. By the 90s, there was significant gentrification, even more so into the 2000s, and basically everything was gone by the 2010s. So all of the cheap places to live and all of the sort of previous sort of safety net, all of it was just gone. The whole thing of like people sleeping in parks and on benches and stuff like that, that was just not a mass phenomenon prior to like 40, 45 years ago. It just wasn't. It was driven by gentrification, deindustrialization, and slashing the social safety net. There are also lesser causes, but those are the major structural causes of it. So no. Also under feudalism, people had more leisure time. Now, people also had, lower standards of living in terms of like technology and education and various things, but as Marx and Engels wrote about capitalism, helping to bring some of the nicer things about cities and urban life out to the rural areas. I mean, that's true. That's true. Getting some culture spread and so on. That there's no culture in rural areas. That's not what I'm saying, but it gets updated more frequently and with greater amounts of new, scientific information, etc., in the cities, which is where that stuff tends to cluster. So anyway, capitalism did bring some of that stuff, but it definitely, I mean, the way that it reshaped people's lives, where now you would work 7 days a week in 10 or 12 hours a day in like horribly noisy, dangerous, indoor conditions, and with time clocks and bells going off, and life just was not like that before. Again, there were trade-offs, but yeah. But anyway, as capitalism has gone on, we have seen new phenomena such as homelessness as we know it today. So Cuba is the sixth in the world in house ownership by population. Material analysis is bad for U.S. exceptionalism. Yeah, and personal house ownership is not necessary. I don't know what the case with everything is in Cuba. I know I have a paper on it somewhere, but I never got around to reading it. Excuse me. There are many ways to solve this. I mean, you can have people own their own houses. You can have much more public housing. You can have cooperative housing. There are many solutions. The U.S. isn't doing any of them. There's a pretty big surplus of vacant housing to homeless people. Ratio is like 20-1. It's just all super gentrified and denied to poor people. Exactly right. Lenin writes about this in The State and Revolution. I think the transition in the imperial core. I'm not. You may be right. It's not ringing a bell off the top of my head. Did I see that idiotic tweet about him? First of all, you can find anything on Twitter. I mean, I have found evidence you can literally find anything on Twitter. But did I see the idiotic tweet about Americans not benefiting in any way from imperialism? No, I did not. Um, no, I did not. But yeah, you can find people saying anything. Actually, one of the things I did collect for today is straight from Democratic Twitter, because again, it is the fundamental task of the U.S. left to break with the Democratic Party and with all capitalist parties and to organize for ourselves, free of corporate influence, free of capitalist influence, bourgeois influence, whatever you want to call it. We need a workers' party that doesn't take corporate money, where workers can figure out class struggle by ourselves, not under corporate chaperoning and supervision. We need people to stop rallying behind the capitalist government and to form a workers' party or parties or coalition of parties, whatever, and to start setting up workers' councils to figure out our own problems and build them and build them and build them, and eventually, use that to challenge the legitimacy of the system. People challenge the legitimacy of the system now using facts and logic. I mean, you can make all kinds of reasoned arguments. The fact is, we need in our hand the alternative. And we build that by organizing a workers' party and councils all over the country that can directly aid in people's lives and, through those interventions in working people's lives, convince them of the power of socialism and that socialists are actually in this to fix this from the bottom up for working people, get rid of capitalism, and that's how you build a movement. We can't just use words. We need to get organized and start fixing problems for people, and really, do engage people in explaining how things can be different, pointing it out, and then doing direct actions to directly confront. Hey, you want to, make this a felony to camp? Well, we just organized 6,000 people to camp in your park, and we're not going to leave after 24 hours. Boom. There's an example off the top of my head. So you get the law struck down, and then You get the momentum of that once you've convinced people, hey, we did something. We got together, we got an idea, we acted on it, and we have the strength, we have the numbers, we got it done. I wonder what else we can get done. That's how you build power, whether it's on the shop floor in a workplace, or whether it's in a community, standing up to the city council, whether it's standing up to a state government. That's how you do it. You build power and you convince people who currently feel disempowered and victimized that by organizing and, you know, sticking together and acting together in organized ways, strategically, we can get shit done. And then that news spreads to other branches of the network and coalition of workers' parties working in these councils, and we get it going. And at some point, again, the US system has no fucking legitimacy. It fucks people over constantly. Many people in this country hate it and want something else. But not enough people are actively building it. Okay? So that's what needs to happen. All right. Uh yeah, no, but imperialism, it's why you can get coffee so cheap, it's why you can get bananas so cheap. Just to name two very low level examples. It's why gasoline has been so cheap. So many things. I mean, you can say that it causes harm and separation and et cetera, et cetera. But to say that, there's no benefit is absurd. And we do need to pry people away from that and inoculate people for like, yeah, we are going to need to trade with the world in a fair way at some point. Once we succeed in confronting and dismantling imperialism, yeah, we're going to have to do things. But the thing is, it doesn't just have to be like right now. Okay, so Russia's invading Ukraine and it's disrupting immediately the oil and gas industry. And it's set to disrupt wheat because I saw some genius on Twitter trying to say, like, oh, look, the capitalists are trying to scare you that, Russia and Ukraine, that this is going to disrupt wheat. But look, they're not even the biggest producers. Yeah, but they are some of the biggest producers of wheat. Wait for it, for export. So yeah, like the US is a bigger producer of wheat, but it doesn't export it. So you got to take stuff like that into account. Anyway, point being, um, people are kind of filled with this assumption that if we were to stop exploiting the world, or our government were to stop exploiting the world on behalf of the capitalists that own it, and for whom the government operates, that everybody would just be like plunged into this dark age, and like the entire standard of living would collapse. I mean, we need to scale back consumption, absolutely. But if we are able to do it under socialist planning, not just capitalist market anarchy, which is all most people know, and it's why people walk around with this assumption that like, oh, it'd just be this like, completely chaotic dark age. No, that's the point of socialist planned economics, is that you can make transitions and weather hardships and, even ration consumption where needed in a way that doesn't completely fuck people over and that isn't, producing massive inequalities along class lines. But we need to build the socialist apparatus that can be capable of implementing that. Otherwise, who's organized? We know the imperialists are organized. Well, then they're going to keep running the show, no matter how many angry tweets you make about it. End of story. So anyway, I need to take a break for 1 minute. This is going really well. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Hang on 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, midstream intermission is over. Resuming stream. So, there are more comments, but before we get to those, let's do another article actually on the same topic, or well, the same topic of housing. This is a follow-up. So, if that one got you angry, buckle up. So, this is from the Kansas City Star, May 4, updated. Co-living rentals banned in this Johnson County city after unanimous council vote. The Shawnee City Council banned this affordable housing option. Here is what the new law means, how it will be enforced, and when it will go into effect. So in other words, we're going to read this article, but were you sort of just hanging on by your fingernails and took on an extra roommate who, you're an adult, you probably don't want 3 or 4 roommates, if any roommates. Did you take on an extra roommate so that you could afford your rent, which most of the rents have gone up around the country, sometimes really substantially and sharply? Well, this is now fucking illegal. So, on Monday, a Johnson County city unanimously voted to ban a living arrangement aimed at helping tenants decrease the amount of rent they pay. And again, comment, not just because, people like, having no privacy just for frugality's sake. No, this is to avoid homelessness, which again, depending on where you are, can be a felony. The Shawnee City Council voted 8-0. I think some people need to be uprooted on that city council to ban co-living, becoming among the first Kansas City area municipalities to prevent the practice. It has gained popularity in recent years as rent and home prices have soared. And again, I think popularity is stretching it. I don't think anyone is like, wow, I always wanted 8 roommates. No. This is a sign of the times. It's a necessity. It's a financial necessity. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, continuing. The new ordinance defines a co-living group as a group of at least 4 unrelated adults living together in a dwelling unit. The ordinance stated that if one adult is unrelated to another adult, then the entire group will be classified as unrelated. So if one adult is unrelated to, you could have 3 family members and then a 4th who is not. Then the entire group will be classified as unrelated, even if a majority is. The practice, which includes things like sharing a kitchen, living room, and community areas, started to gain popularity as rental and housing prices continued to increase across the United States. Quote, co-living has become increasingly popular because of its cost effectiveness and greater flexibility in cities where rents are high for young professionals, the Washington Post wrote in 2019. They're really shying away from just stating the necessity of this for many people. The city council's vote came despite the city council's vote came despite a presentation from a Johnson County organization where a housing study showed that the average home price in the county rose 37% from 2017 to 2021, climbing from $324,000 to $444,000. This is what I was talking about before. Housing prices, they bottom 2015, 2016, then 2017 and on they start really climbing. The study also showed that wages did not rise at the same rate, you think? Quote, Shawnee is one of the 3 largest communities in Johnson County, so what happens in Shawnee is really consequential for what happens to the rest of the county, said Christy Bauman, the Director of Education and Planning for United Community Services of Johnson County. So just to restate that, this is one of the 3 largest communities, so it's consequential, it's affecting the most people, and possibly it's also going to set kind of a precedent. Bauman said that the organization received a grant in 2017 from the Kansas Healthcare Foundation, which was part of a Healthy Communities initiative. The task was to identify a health equity issue, she said. Quote, over and over again, what rose to the surface was the cost of housing was the thing that was impacting people's ability to be healthy. They're spending all their fucking money on housing, and they don't have enough left over to take care of themselves. So that's outrageous. Let me just add, so also from Kansas City, you might say, what kind of fucking nightmare fascist hellhole of a society would do this? Well, I can partly answer that. This is from May 29, another article. Unarmed pregnant woman shot 5 times by Kansas City police. So, short article. 2 Kansas City police officers critically wounded a pregnant woman while her hands were in the air Friday night. According to the Kansas City Defender, the Kansas City Police Department claims that the shooting occurred during the attempted arrest of Leona Hale, 26, and an unidentified man in connection to a stolen vehicle. However, witnesses claim this is untrue, since Hale held her hands up during the police confrontation. One of the witnesses, named Shadanja, said she heard police officers yelling, "Get out of the car," to 2 people who was in the car. There's a lot of, anyway, to 2 people who were in the car next to her vehicle and recorded the aftermath of the shooting. A man exited the vehicle and jumped the fence moments later. The pregnant woman gets out of the car seconds later with her hands up. The cops told the woman to get on the ground, but the woman informed them that she was pregnant, and so she couldn't get down on the ground. So police reportedly told the woman to get on the ground. She explained to the officers that she was pregnant and unable to. She also informed them that there was a gun in the car. Officers screamed the command multiple times, and the pregnant woman backed into a parking lot fence, leading police to pull out their weapons. No, not leading police to. That was a choice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember it because it didn't stop. I remember seeing her hit the ground and I froze, Danja told the Kansas City Discover. Several other witnesses said the same story, which reportedly contradicted an official statement released by Kansas City Police Sergeant Bell. Quote, "We never want to be in these type of situations." Oh, I'm not even going to read the cops. Fuck the cops, honestly. Forget it. Local residents in Kansas City said that the police department has a history of corruption and racism on social media. And so there was a number of posts related to that. Not sure if I grabbed one or not. But just to know, I don't think I did, to throw another thing in here. So this also happened. Supreme Court rules innocence isn't enough to overturn black man's conviction of murder. This is from May 26. Barry Jones, who sits on death row in Arizona after being convicted in 1995 for the rape and murder of his girlfriend's 4-year-old daughter, is still facing execution despite evidence indicating that he may be innocent. So this is a whole thing. I'm kind of putting this in here as a bookmark because I want to do more about it, and hopefully somebody will remind me on that. I think that from this article was mistaken. I think that Barry Jones actually wasn't black, but the story still stands. And of course, in the U.S. Prison system, it's way disproportionate along racial lines. So, anyway, fair assumption, in other words. This is the country. I don't know what people are waiting for at this point. It can't just be that people don't know what to do. I'm sure that is part of it, but I'm just at a loss for words. Like, I'm just kind of speechless. So, a few more articles, and we have more things we're going to get into, but I'm going to catch up with the chat again, see what everyone has to say about all this. So back to the imperialism comment. No, it was a pat sock. Someone, yeah, that people don't benefit from imperialism in the U.S. I don't know what to say. Block those clowns. Like, just don't listen to them at this point. Like, I think we've established at this point that the, quote, patriotic socialists, aka fascists calling themselves socialists, this is well established at this point. They're willfully choosing to just ignore and reject reality. So I'm not sure further debate is really necessary at this point. Somebody said, debating some of these people is just opportunism at this point. Somebody said, I was expecting Biden to do a mini New Deal to at least slow down the growing socialist sentiment. Not even just that, my super old far-right grandpa was going on about a coming rebellion. So it's far and wide general discontent. It is discontent. Unfortunately, a lot of the people are on the MAGA side, and can't be reached. You know, if they're willing to actually fucking learn why they're wrong, you know, there's a lot of right-wing people who think that part of the definition of fascism is something other people do. They think they are not capable of having fascist views, and they wind up, because of that in part, being led directly into fascist views, and they cannot recognize them once they're embracing them. Not to say that I would necessarily reject them. Some of them come out of their interests, but um, it would help if they would, you know, at least accept that, you know, fascism isn't a left-wing movement, for example, et cetera, et cetera. You get a lot of that. Yeah, there's a lot of discontent. Conditions are frankly terrible if you're not rich. I mean, honestly, like for me, back in the 2000s, like 15 years ago, trying to warn people, like seeing the writing on the wall with, you know, things that had happened in the 90s and then where Bush and Cheney were taking it, of course, with the rubber stamp from the Democrats, minimal resistance. Like things were going to get horrible. And we're there, okay? We're there now. Like the the kind of shit that people 15, 20 years ago were trying to warn people about, it's happening now and it's happening fast. And I gotta say, the response in kind from working people is not adequate. It is not adequate. Step it up. That's all I can really say. It needs to go faster. And, you know, I'm trying to do this channel, trying to help accelerate that process and help give people more rungs of the ladder to climb up on. And I'm just anything you can be doing, please start doing it, because we just do not have time to wait anymore. If you've done some of the study, you know at least halfway what you're talking about. Get out there, get involved, and fight for the positions that, and the positions relating to actions and activity. Get out there and do it. Join what is in your area. If there's nothing in your area, join something statewide. If there's nothing in your state, I find that hard to believe, but if there's really nothing in your state, join something national. Contribute on whatever level you can. You know, use what you can to try to find other people in your area. Get something going. It can start with 3 or 4 people, really. Believe me, wherever you are, there's some kind of struggle that needs to be fought. And, you know, where you are, whether it's a city, whether it's middle of nowhere, rural, it's, you know, it's going to be different what that struggle is. But the overall crisis is everywhere. So, you know, even if it's, I was talking to somebody on Twitter who was like, you know, I'm in a real rural place. It's a lot of like conservatives and like honestly just Nazis. And I was like, you know, so for that person, they don't feel safe organizing because there's like an imminent threat of danger. Now, I'd say this if the left had been organizing there earlier, maybe it wouldn't be. That said, some of these places, they were talking about the Pacific Northwest. There's some really entrenched far right stuff there. Look up the Northwest Territorial Imperative. You can get some idea of what I'm talking about. So, okay, granted, but then join an Antifa group. You know, 95% of Antifa work is research. It's not just like dressing in black and throwing stuff. Some of it's that, but 95% is research and, you know, exposing right-wing networks. So get into that. Do it. But do something. Honestly, we are running out of time. I mean, for many people, time already has run out. And for the rest of us, it's running out. And this is it. Like, people need to not wait. I cannot emphasize that enough. You know, I appreciate also a lot of people are coming to this fairly new. You know, maybe you've only been doing like this stuff's been on your radar for 6 months or a year. I appreciate that. Welcome to all the new people. By the way, the channel is about to cross 8,000 subscribers. It's at like 7980. That's great. I didn't really have a plan for like the channel. You know, that was not on the radar when I started this channel. I just wanted to like see what I could do, get some readings out there, etc. I love that people are contributing in the ways that they are. The community around this channel is great. And I'm not trying to like freak anybody out. And I'm also not trying to make people feel inadequate. Okay, because I know some people are coming to this like pretty fresh and they've never done anything left before. In that case, check out the last live stream, S4A number 20. I spent like the first half an hour talking about how to join an org and how to get involved. I just want to really reiterate that the time is now. Just people need to like do everything that they possibly can. Obviously, try to avoid burnout, but like we really need to get a lot more stuff off the ground right now. In the next year or two, it would be great to see more pushback because the imperialists are organized and they're using that organization and they're well funded. They're funded with surplus value that we gave them, by the way. All right. Oh, we got a badass in the comments. Labor unions and tackling homeless are average social democratic policies. Um, yeah, and here's the thing, the US isn't even fucking doing those. So, as far as rebuilding the US left, there's a lot of intermediate and beginning stages that aren't even covered at this point. The US working class in the last 2 or 3 generations has not even maxed out the possibilities of social democracy, let alone is confident of its ability to make revolution. People are terrified. They're scared, they're powerless, they're frightened. They can't even stand up to their boss, let alone a tank. You need to build up to this. You need to build confidence in people. You need to build strength. People need to gain class consciousness, not just through reading a book, but through struggle. So, yeah. Anyway, the comment continues. Anyway, the rest of the comment doesn't really make sense, but thanks for your contribution, but no thanks. Just amazing to me. The person was actually speaking against Marxism, believe it or not. Although that was an interesting attack, which was, these are average social democratic policies. You don't need Marxism. No. You absolutely do. Because the problem is we had all this stuff. We had labor unions. We had, public housing, and it wasn't enough. And we need to wipe capitalism off the face of the earth. That's the only way you actually cement these gains. And the fall of Eastern Europe and the USSR, etc., some of the rollbacks in China are evidence that even if you have a revolution, it's not permanent and it's not invincible. It can still fall into revisionism. It can still even fall prey to counter-revolution. Even at an advanced, developed state, it can fall prey to counter-revolution. But that's why you need to get rid of imperialists so that there's nobody left to threaten it. You get a bit more margin for error. But the bottom line is we're living in a bleak time of reaction. We absolutely need to get organizing going again. So anyway, like I said, please reference S4A Livestream number 20 for more of my reasoning about that. Moving on. I feel like it's worth explaining to people that the profits in real estate industry incentivizes homelessness. Hopefully people have heard of artificial scarcity. It's the same thing with Whole Foods putting locks on their dumpsters so that people can't, feed themselves for free with food that is just not being used, but is past its sell-by date, but isn't necessarily spoiled yet. It's not that they literally hate homeless people. I mean, no, some do. And they want them to starve. Don't get me wrong, some also do. It's just that they don't want free food in homes because people won't shop. It's a gross numbers game. No, absolutely. They do it to keep prices up. This is why, during gluts, they will dump milk. They will dump potatoes. They did that at the beginning of the pandemic. You just see, it looked like a quarry, just these like mountains of stuff. And you zoom in and it's potatoes, or milk getting dumped by like tens of thousands of gallons. It's to keep prices up. So it's artificial scarcity. That's a feature of capitalism. Socialism, you use what you have. You make what you need and you use what you make. That's the idea. Not like you make a bunch of stuff on the venture that it might be profitable. That's what capitalism does. And then, break stuff to just keep prices high. so that it's profitable. Capitalists do not want to do anything. This is the thing people need to know. Capitalists, they don't want to do things that aren't profitable. So no matter how much people need something, if it's not profitable, they just don't want to do it. And so it used to be that, oh, the government would like pick up some of the slack there. Like the government would just do the stuff that's not profitable. But then in the neoliberal era, they won't even let the government do it not profitably. So this is the insane time we're living in. And it is, putting people in situations that, I mean, it's killing people. And then the people who are alive, it's putting them in so much pain. Some of them wish they were dead. This is an awful, awful, awful period of history we're going through right now. And we're the ones who can end it. The working class, that's it. The capitalists are not going to change this. We hopefully hope some capitalists will defect at some point when they realize there needs to be a change, but they're not going to be the impetus. If anybody wants to see what a human settlement should be like, take a look at Chongqing in China or what Moscow used to be in Soviet times. What resources would you recommend on that? Because, yeah, I think that is inspiring. And we do need to give people examples, absolutely, of what else is possible. I think that's part of why, like looking at the China COVID policy and why the West needs to construe the China COVID policy as like so nightmarish and dystopian is they can't have people making those demands. They can't have people looking at being protected from a serious disease as a good thing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like if we get housing, they'll find some way to be like, the next thing you'll see an article in the or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, like, should everyone be housed? Like, I mean, it'll be like the next day. So, yeah, looks like a couple of people are responding to that other commenter. Something about, yeah, the baggage of Marxism. Response is full worker control brings the baggage like no parasite landlords. Let's see. First Amendment audits and car camping. I think there's case law in the Ninth Circuit that it's a right. Thank you. I'm going to look that up. And Simon, you say you lived in one of those. Was it one of the two cities you named, or where? What did you live in? Bringing socialism forward in the wake of capitalism is going to have contradictions. That's a given. Yeah, it's a transitional system. But what matters in that case is continuing to organize to overcome these contradictions. Yeah, so we can organize for reforms under capitalism. We can make demands under capitalism, and we should be making big demands under capitalism and organizing to enforce those demands. We will get better conditions in the short term, but there is a cap. And at some point, we will reach a point where no further progress can be made without actually ending the system. And the idea is you want to time it so that you've built enough confidence in the working class movement that people actually feel confident that they can take on something that huge. Because right now, people are scared and they're cowering. And, I don't blame them. We've been living through a nightmare. But we've got to, as the socialist movement, build the confidence back up in working people that, hey, we're not going to be victims and we're going to, we're going to empower ourselves by cooperating with each other against our common enemy. Because right now the enemy seems too big, too powerful, too scary. And people just, we've got to change it so that people feel more comfortable taking on these fights. A lot of people are just too scared. Okay, one of the best comments I've read today. I would like to have guaranteed housing. I think if you went out there, you would not find much disagreement among most working class people there, and that's how you start a movement. So start it up. Start it up. The guaranteed housing movement. I want guaranteed housing. Go around with that. You will attract people, and and then mobilize them. To engage in more and more actions to take steps towards that goal. And eventually capitalism needs to be done away with, but we don't have anywhere near the strength or confidence to do that. today. And that's what's got to be built. When we talk about organizing and getting people active, that's what it is. You're not going to just jump from where we are here to that. And following up on that comment, I sure as hell would prefer it to homelessness, especially when rent is capped at 6% of income. Yeah, it'd be excellent. Yeah, and the 500,000 homeless people in America would appreciate it too. Game theory proves cooperation is superior to domination. Win-win makes winners lose. Sorry, win-win makes winners. Win-lose makes bigger winners and a sea of losers. What we lose in price of gas and bananas, we will gain 1,000 times over with a saved planet, and future generations will thank us for dismantling empire. Yes. Yeah, a lot of these things are non-negotiable. So I thought that this was going to be a shorter stream. It's actually going to more of its usual length, but actually I need to wrap up. We're probably going to do this again tomorrow because if I can, because there is a lot more that I would like to cover, but that reminds me, didn't get to the whole chat. That's okay. We'll start the next stream with the rest of today's chat. And where did I want to go? Not the NLRB stuff. I do want to go over some workers' rights stuff, and I don't want to get into that long. But I believe, oh yeah. So we were just talking about the environment. There it is. Fish on drugs. Anybody remember sheep on drugs? Probably not. Cocktail of medications is contaminating the ocean food chain. So oceans, they're important. You know, we humans don't breathe so well or at all underwater. So, you know, we don't usually really see with our own eyes more than, you know, a few dozen feet under the surface of the oceans, but they're big, they're teeming with life, they're very important for the climate systems and all kinds of other ecosystems that, you know, we very much rely on for our existence as we know it today. But, you know, we've done other articles about ocean health, whether it's ocean warming and the effect that that has on climate, and it slows down some of the currents in the ocean, which drive climate. Also, we did an article about how sunscreen chemicals near tourist beaches are winding up being absorbed by seagrasses and potentially interfering with photosynthesis, which is, of course, how the plants make their energy. So there's a cocktail of medications, obviously coming from human settlements, contaminating ocean food chain. The fish and other marine life are not, you know, running pharmaceutical labs, or are they? No. All right, so a study in Florida finds, quote, widespread traces of a total of 58 medications, including heart drugs, opioids, antidepressants, and antifungals in increasingly rare bonefish and their prey. Nicknamed gray ghosts for their lustrous silver scales, remarkable stealth and speed, bonefish can swim at up to 40 miles an hour. This species, protected by catch and release laws in the U.S., is revered by anglers around the world, many of whom visit Florida to seek the elusive fish. By the way, don't catch fish just to release them. Would you like a hook through your face? And then somebody's like, hey, ain't he a beaut? And then like they throw you back into your community. Don't do that. It's not good. But evidence points to a steep drop in bonefish numbers in South Florida. Populations have fallen more than 50% over 4 decades, according to estimates by researchers. Dr. Jennifer Rehague, a fish ecologist and associate professor at Florida International University, or FIU, has spoken to many anglers about the fish's disappearance from Florida's seagrass flats. They've said to me, I've fished bonefish all my life and I can't find them. I haven't seen a bonefish in 5 years, and it's freaking me out. For the past 3 years, Rehague has been leading a study to find out why, and has discovered something that might help explain it: pharmaceuticals. Of the 93 bonefish she and her team sampled, all tested positive for at least one pharmaceutical, including heart medications, opioids, antifungals, and antidepressants, according to the results of the study published in February. Hang on. Somebody going by on, I don't know what it is. It's not even one of those like crotch rocket things. It sounds like they're riding a freaking lawnmower. But anyway, why would you do that? Where were we? Of the 93 bonefish, oh yeah, we did that one. In 56% of fish, researchers detected pharmaceutical quantities at levels, quote, above which we expect negative effects, according to the study. One bonefish sampled in Key West tested positive for 17 pharmaceuticals, 8 of them antidepressants that were up to 300 times above the human therapeutic level. Pharmaceutical exposure in South Florida's bonefish was, quote, widespread and concerning, the study concluded. So there goes the idea that, oh, it's a big ocean, we can just dump shit in it. No, you can't. The researchers also studied 125 animals that bonefish prey on, including shrimp, crabs, and small fish. Each contained an average of 11 pharmaceutical contaminants, indicating that the contamination is not limited to bonefish. And let me add, they may mention it, but when you have predator animals, contaminants like mercury, like whatever it is that's contaminating them, it gets concentrated about tenfold, I believe. It probably depends on the contaminant, but it gets substantially concentrated for each step up the food chain. I know it's a food web, but in the specific sense of like, this ate that, which ate that, which ate that. Well, the, bottom level prey in that, like whatever they ate, it's getting concentrated as it goes up to up the food chain. So by the time that you have a predator eating like, a second order predator, they're eating such like a contaminated animal that it's like just riddled with the stuff because it's been concentrating it from all the smaller prey that they've been eating. Right. While more is known about the potential impacts of pharmaceutical pollution in freshwater, marine impacts have been far less studied. There's still not enough information to directly link bonefish decline with drugs, but, quote, the potential for pharmaceuticals to be a problem for fish in the sea is formidable and concerning, Rehague says. Nearly 5 billion medications are prescribed annually in the U.S. alone. The average American has about 12 prescriptions a year. Pharmaceuticals reach the water in various ways, including through manufacturing and rainwater runoff, but human and livestock wastewater, ban CAFOs, is also one of the main causes, especially what humans send down the toilet. The specific health consequences of pharmaceutical contamination on marine life are not yet fully understood, but there is evidence of multiple negative effects. Quote, it can provoke several consequences, mainly on the behavior of fish, but it can also affect the ability to reproduce, their ability to reproduce and their endocrine system, says Elena Fabri, a professor at the Department of Biological, Geological, and Environmental Sciences at Bologna University in Italy. In 2013, scientists from Umeå University in Sweden, which partnered with FIU on the bonefish study, found that wild perch were less fearful and more antisocial when exposed to anti-anxiety medications, which could affect feeding and breeding. It reminds me of another study I was just reading about, which is they were trying to genetically engineer hamsters. They were messing with their vasopressin receptors, and they were trying to increase bonding. And it literally had the exact opposite. It turned the hamsters like psychotically violent towards each other. It was like a level. Hamsters are not known as like terribly aggressive animals, but they're like, oh yeah, we predict that this tinkering with their vasopressin expression is going to make them more cuddly and likely to bond with each other. And they were like, there was a video of like the camera was like above the hamster cage, and the hamster was like staring down the camera, and then all of a sudden it lunges upward at the like plastic see-through ceiling of the cage and like bangs its head and falls back down. But it's like, trying to just basically break through the glass to like attack the camera. Not normal hamster behavior. So anyway, we'll read that again there. They found that wild perch were less fearful and more antisocial when exposed to anti-anxiety medications, which could affect feeding and breeding. So they take the anti-anxiety medications. Incidentally, one of the side effects of anti-anxiety medications can be anxiety. Not in everyone, but there's can be one of the listed side effects. Um, so let's assume, though, that it's working sort of as intended and that it affects the fish the same way, just to speculate briefly on that. So the fish have decreased anxiety. Does that maybe is their natural sort of anxiety and survival instinct some of what makes them stick to the group that they normally travel in? They're less fearful and more antisocial. So it's possible that some of that is what holds them together in the first place. Interesting. 2016 study by the same university found salmon exposed to this medication swam faster and had riskier behavior. So again, it's like reducing that natural fear. Crayfish's exposure to antidepressants has been linked to altered behavior, increasing their boldness, and the time that they spent foraging, potentially making them more vulnerable to predators. So this is not necessarily well-founded, lack of fear. They've evolved a certain level of fear because it protects them from, they are wary to a certain amount because being wary at that amount keeps their population at a good level. If they become less wary, more of them may get eaten. They're going to be less cautious. There are three main ways wastewater ends up in the sea, says Rachel Silverstein, director of the environmental organization Miami Waterkeeper. Sewage spills, discharge of treated wastewater into the ocean, and malfunctioning septic tanks. These have all been major problems in Florida. In 2020, 212 million U.S. gallons, or 800 million liters, of sewage spilled into Fort Lauderdale's waterways. Quote, though most contamination is screened out at sewage treatment plants, it's very hard to remove some of those pharmaceuticals from the water, Silverstein says. In addition, more than half of the septic tanks in Miami-Dade County are not filtering waste properly due to rising sea levels, creating an environmental and public health hazard, she says. Silverstein sees FIU's study as, quote, further evidence that we need to make urgent changes to upgrade our infrastructure to continue living in this region and protecting our economic and environmental interests. The problem is not limited to Florida. Experts say there is an urgent need to improve wastewater infrastructure globally to remove pharmaceuticals before they reach the ocean. Implementing an additional step in wastewater management known as ozonation could help, Rahig says. The technique adds ozone to the water to help remove contaminants that are often missed by traditional wastewater treatment, including pharmaceuticals and pesticides. But not enough countries are retrofitting plants to incorporate the step, she says, pointing to Switzerland, Sweden, and Germany as among the only countries, quote, that are actually dealing with this issue of pharmaceuticals. So ozone is O3, very strong oxidizer. So I'm not familiar with that process, but I imagine it just destroys a lot of molecules from all the reactivity of the oxygen. Coming up on the last screen of the article, improved wastewater management is important, but the pharmaceutical industry itself also has a responsibility to tackle the issue by exploring greener alternatives, Fabry says. Quote, we cannot ban these substances because we need them, but we could favor or push pharmaceutical industries to find greener alternatives. Yeah, I mean, we could. Like, literally, we're finding fish on drugs, but, maybe we should think about it. This is the rate at which things are happening right now. This is why I'm saying it needs, like by the end of the year, we need substantial news that people are, like, organizing in major ways. This needs to happen fast. This could include producing drugs that break down faster in the environment. Yeah, if anybody feels like doing it. There are political moves to understand more about the impact of drugs on waterways. In 2019, for example, the EU adopted a strategic plan to address the risks from pharmaceutical pollution in the environment, but many such initiatives focus more on the impact on freshwater environments. And I'm not sure that they state the reason for that, but I gotta wonder if part of it's like, it's a big ocean. Anyway, as further research points to the impact of pharmaceuticals in the ocean, Fabry says we must continue publishing about the subject to inform regulatory agencies, such as they are, that there is a need for these regulations in marine environments as well. For now, researchers say that there's a long way to go in the US. Tell me something I don't know. I mean, really, try to find an area where that's not the case in the US. We're so behind. yet like such the source of the problem. I guess those two things go together, don't they? Well, the control of chemicals entering our environment has always been reactive, says Aaron Adams, Director of Science and Conservation at the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, conservative organization. Oh, excuse me, that doesn't make sense. The conservation, they are conservative in a certain way. They like to conserve things. Organization that commissioned the FIU study. Quote, no legal limits exist for the control of pollution from pharmaceuticals during manufacture, use, nor disposal, the report noted. So let's interject some socialist knowledge. Why is that? Because what drove the creation of those chemicals in the first place? Seeking profitability. All of any cost in capitalism that can be externalized, say onto fish and other marine life, will be externalized. They need things to be as profitable as possible. Otherwise, somebody's going to take them over. Somebody's going to do it cheaper, and they're going to get bought out, and then they get proletarianized again. Yay. Yeah, so capitalists don't want that. So everybody's trying to do everything as cheaply as they possibly can. And, if they're allowed to externalize these costs, they absolutely will. It's just not built into the system. What is profit. That's what leads everything and limits everything. Nick Castillo, a PhD student at FIU and co-author of the study, says standardized metrics are needed to assess the effects of drugs on exposed organisms. Currently, he points out, these, quote, antiquated environmental regulations tend to ignore pharmaceuticals, quote, because they aren't lethal. Studying the impacts of pharmaceuticals in waterways has always focused heavily on freshwater. Verhaeg says, quote, this is one of the first studies to go into marine coastal environments and over a large area to show that pharmaceuticals are everywhere. So that's the end of that article, and that's the last thing that we're going to do today. And if people want to jot down a note or two in the comments, I will collect those and we'll start off next stream with that. I unfortunately do have to run for today. But thanks again to the patrons whose names were on the screen. Thanks to everybody who showed up in the chat today. Well, almost everybody. And we'll do this again real soon. Honestly, this was a good live stream, as they usually are. I think got nice back and forth going, covered some interesting subject matter, and hopefully stimulating the people out there listening. We will follow it up soon because I only got through about half of the stuff that I did pull for today. So hopefully everybody is all set in the chat. So I will wrap it up here. Thanks to everybody on YouTube listening to this after the fact. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just thanks or good video, because all of that helps to boost the channel. And while the patrons help to fund and allow me to spend more time creating the content, once it's up, that engagement is key for as many people as possible seeing the content. Also, thanks to whoever pinned the basic IWW organizing guide to the top of BreadTube, which BreadTube has its problems, such as if you scroll down from that, some of the top posts are about like, video games and stuff like that, things that have absolutely no bearing on anything real in the world of social struggles. So definite challenges there. That said, whoever had the good insight to pin something real world, practical, and it could lead to the restoration of a radical labor movement. Thank you for doing that. So thanks again for listening. We will catch you in the next video.